There's a kind of pain that sits quietly inside you. It doesn't scream. It doesn't demand attention. It just lives there. You carry it to work. You carry it home. You carry it to bed. And yet, you never speak of it. Maybe because no one would understand. Or maybe because words feel too small for what your heart is holding. I've met many people like that. Men and women in their 50s, 60s. People who've lived enough to know that not every wound needs to be shown. Some pains are private teachers. They shape your spirit in silence. They teach you who you really are when no one is watching. A man once came to me after losing his wife of 40 years. He said, "Everyone keeps telling me to talk about it, but I don't want to talk. I just want to sit with it." And I told him, "Then sit. Let your pain breathe. Don't rush to fix it with words." Because sometimes, silence is the only honest response to heartbreak. The Stoics understood this deeply. Seneca wrote that, "What we suffer from doing, we can learn to suffer well." He didn't mean we should enjoy pain. He meant we can use it, turn it into strength, perspective, calm. Pain is not the enemy. Resistance to pain is. When you stop fighting your suffering, it begins to teach you. You see, we live in a world that hates silence. Everywhere you go, noise, opinions, endless chatter. People tell you to open up, to vent, to share your feelings. And sometimes, yes, that helps. But there's another kind of healing that happens only in quiet. When you stop explaining, stop performing your grief, stop seeking validation for your wounds. There's a sacred stillness in that. When you allow the pain to simply be, without naming it, without hiding it, without trying to make it make sense. That's where transformation begins. Not in the talking, but in the listening. To yourself, to life, to something deeper than words. The Stoics called this apatheia, not apathy, but the freedom from being ruled by emotion. It doesn't mean you feel nothing. It means you've learned to feel everything without letting it destroy your peace. And that begins with silence. Think of a wounded animal. When it's hurt, it doesn't howl forever. It retreats into the forest. It lies down. It heals. Nature doesn't need words to mend itself, and neither do you. When you hold your pain in quiet dignity, something miraculous happens. The pain begins to dissolve, not because it disappears, but because you stop identifying with it. It's no longer you. It's simply a part of your story. You start to realize, I can be hurt and still whole. I can be broken and still beautiful. I want you to think about your own life for a moment. What pain are you carrying right now, quietly, silently, without words? Maybe it's the distance between you and someone you love. Maybe it's regret for something you can't change. Maybe it's the slow ache of growing older, watching time take away faces, strength, memories. Whatever it is, don't rush to escape it. Sit with it. Let it speak in its own language, the language of silence. Because the truth is, pain doesn't need an audience to be meaningful. It only needs your attention, your patience, your respect. That's the secret the Stoics knew. Transformation isn't loud. It doesn't happen in drama or noise. It happens quietly, in ordinary moments. When you choose not to react, not to justify, not to explain. When you simply breathe and say, "This too is part of me." And maybe that's enough. If this message speaks to you, I invite you to pause for a moment. Take a deep breath. And if you find comfort in this kind of reflection, please, like this video, share it with someone who carries their pain in silence, and subscribe for more Stoic lessons on inner strength and peace. Let me leave you with a question to think about tonight. What pain in your life have you been trying to explain when perhaps it was meant to be transformed quietly, without words? Part 2. When silence speaks. There's a kind of silence that isn't emptiness. It's full of meaning, like a pause between two waves. When you've been through real pain, you start to hear it. It's not the silence of avoidance, but the silence of understanding. I remember visiting a veteran once, an old man with steady eyes. He'd seen war, loss, and the slow forgetting of friends. He didn't talk much. His living room was quiet, except for the hum of the old clock on the wall. When I asked him what kept him peaceful after everything he'd endured, he smiled and said, "I stopped arguing with my memories." That's what silence really is. The moment you stop fighting the echo of what's gone. You stop trying to make the past behave. The Stoics called this ataraxia, a calm, unshaken by circumstance. Not indifference, but a deep steadiness. When Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters," he was describing this still center we can return to when the world grows too loud. You see, most people think silence means nothing is happening. But within the Stoic heart, silence is a forge. It's where emotion cools into wisdom, where pain transforms into patience. I once knew a woman who lost everything in a fire: her home, her books, her paintings. For weeks, she didn't speak much. Her friends worried, but months later she told me, "In that silence, I discovered what I couldn't lose: myself." That's the paradox of quiet strength. The less you say, the more your soul starts to speak. The mind begins to settle, and the heart starts to make sense of what words never could. Try it sometime. Sit alone without music, without distraction, and just listen, not to the world, but to the quiet behind your thoughts. At first, it feels unbearable. Then, it feels honest. And finally, it feels like peace. The Stoic doesn't run from emotion. He allows it to visit, but not to stay forever. He gives it space in silence, so it can leave on its own. That's the true discipline. Not suppressing pain, but giving it room to teach you what it came to teach. So when life hits you hard and you can't find the words, don't rush to fill the space. Sit inside it. That stillness isn't a void. It's your transformation beginning. And I want to ask you something. When was the last time you let silence speak for you, instead of trying to explain what no one else could truly understand? If you've felt the weight of silence lately, remember, it's not emptiness. It's space for your soul to grow. Share this video with someone who's learning to be still again. And before you go, I want to hear from you in the comments. When was the last time you let silence speak for you, and it said exactly what needed to be heard? Part 3. The Inner Alchemy. Turning pain into strength. Pain has a strange kind of chemistry. It burns, yes, but under the right conditions, it refines. Most people spend their lives trying to escape it. The Stoics learned to transform it. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." That simple line hides a revolution. Pain itself is neutral. It's the story we tell about it that makes it poison or medicine. I once worked with a man who'd been through a devastating divorce. He told me, "I lost everything: my home, my rhythm, my confidence." But over time, something shifted. He stopped asking, "Why me?" and began asking, "What now?" He started running every morning, then volunteering at a shelter. He told me, "Pain gave me back my discipline. It was the teacher I didn't want, but the one I needed." That's what I call the inner alchemy, the unseen process where suffering becomes strength, loss becomes clarity, and silence becomes self-respect. It's not dramatic, no fireworks, just the slow, steady turning of the soul toward what is within its control. Marcus Aurelius faced betrayal, illness, and war. He didn't curse the pain. He wrote about it, studied it, let it sculpt him. To him, pain was the gymnasium of the mind, a place to train endurance and humility. He understood that when life takes away, it's also giving, a chance to prove the power of your own reason, your own virtue. You and I, we can't choose the blows life delivers. but we can choose what kind of person walks out of the wreckage. Every scar you carry has two stories, one of suffering and one of survival. The Stoic chooses to tell the second. So when something breaks inside you, don't rush to fix it. Watch, listen, learn what's being rebuilt in the quiet. That's alchemy, not magic, practice. And if you've ever turned pain into something noble, patience, wisdom, compassion, you already know the secret. Before we move on, take a breath. Ask yourself, what if my greatest wound is actually my greatest workshop? If that thought stays with you, hit like, share this with someone walking through their own fire, and subscribe so we can keep exploring this together. This quiet art of turning pain into power. Part 4. The Power of Silence. When you don't need words to win. There are pains that don't need to be told, because they weren't meant to be understood by others. They exist to teach you how to grow quietly. People often mistake silence for weakness, as if staying quiet means you lack courage or strength to fight back. But those who've walked through storms know silence isn't escape. It's a choice, the mark of someone who has learned to rise above noise. In a world that rewards reaction, silence is rebellion. It's the refusal to be dragged into the chaos of other people's emotions. It's standing firm while others shout, staying grounded when others try to shake your peace. Seneca once said, "He who is brave is free." And sometimes, bravery looks like saying nothing at all, trusting that the truth doesn't need to be shouted to be real. You see, when you've been hurt deeply, words often lose meaning. Every explanation feels small compared to what's inside. But silence gives you space to breathe again. It allows pain to settle, not to define you, but to transform you. Pain spoken too soon becomes complaint. Pain held in silence becomes wisdom. Think about it. The strongest trees never scream when the storm hits. They bend, they endure, and they stand taller when the wind is gone. That's what silence does. It roots you deeper. It teaches you to listen, not to the noise outside, but to the strength growing inside. When someone insults you, silence strips their power. When someone doubts you, silence lets your actions speak louder than any argument. The Stoics believed that silence is the language of mastery, the moment when emotion no longer rules your response. Because what truly matters is not what's said, but what's understood without words. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike your enemy." Silence is that revenge. It's walking away with your dignity intact. It's refusing to let bitterness stain your soul. If this resonates with you, leave a comment below. Tell me, when was the moment you realized you didn't need to be understood to live at peace? And if you find these reflections meaningful, like the video, subscribe, and share it with someone who's learning to stay calm in a noisy world. The next part, we'll talk about how stillness becomes strength, and why the Stoics saw peace not as escape, but as the highest form of power. If this resonates with you, leave a comment below. Tell me, when was the moment you realized you didn't need to be understood to live at peace? And if you find these reflections meaningful, like the video, subscribe, and share it with someone who's learning to. Part 5. The Quiet Power. Strength without noise. Not all power roars. Some power simply stands, calm, unmoved, unbothered. In a world that measures strength by noise, the Stoic reminds us, the loudest voice is often the weakest. Think about a tree in a storm. The loud, cracking branches make the most sound, but it's the deep roots, silent and unseen, that keep the tree standing. That's the kind of strength life asks of you when everything around feels chaotic. I once met an old boxer, retired for decades. His hands were scarred, his body slow, but his eyes steady as stone. I asked if he missed the ring. He said, "The fight never leaves. It just moves inside. Now I win by staying calm." That's Stoicism in practice. The quiet mastery of your emotions, your reactions, your energy. It's knowing when to walk away, when to pause, when to let life speak first. We live in times where everyone wants to be heard, but few know how to listen. Everyone wants to win, but few know how to wait. The Stoic does both. He carries himself like water, flexible, patient, but unbreakable in direction. Marcus Aurelius led armies, faced betrayals, illness, and death. Yet he wrote in his journal, not to boast, but to remind himself to stay gentle, even under pressure. He understood what few do, that calm is not weakness. It's containment. It's power held in reserve. When you reach that place, when your peace is no longer negotiable, you stop reacting to every provocation. You no longer need to explain yourself, nor to prove your strength. You simply are, and people feel it. It's the quiet ones who change the atmosphere of a room, not by force, but by presence. So if you've been tired of proving your worth, maybe it's time to return to stillness, to hold your energy like a flame cupped in your hands. Protect it. Guard it. That's your power. Let the world rush and shout. You stay still, stay certain. And before you go, I'd like to ask you, what does quiet power mean to you? Is it patience, control, or simply peace? If this reflection stirred something in you, like this video, subscribe for more Stoic wisdom and share it with someone learning to find strength in silence. The next part, we'll close this journey with the final lesson, peace beyond pain. It's about what remains when the noise ends, and how to live, not just survive, after the storm. Part 6, the final lesson, peace beyond pain. There comes a day when the pain no longer burns. It just breathes quietly beside you. It doesn't disappear, but it softens. It becomes part of your story, not your identity. That's when you know healing has happened. Not when the memories fade, but when they stop controlling the temperature of your heart. A friend of mine, a Vietnam veteran, once said, "You never forget the war, but one day you stop fighting it inside you." He didn't say it with pride. He said it with peace. That kind of peace the Stoics talked about, not comfort, but clarity. Seneca wrote, "He who has peace within has everything." It's easy to misunderstand that. Peace isn't the absence of pain. It's the maturity to sit beside it and still choose calm. When you've lived long enough, you realize life never truly stops breaking your heart. It just teaches you how to live with the cracks open, light coming through. The Stoic path was never about suppressing emotion. It's about transforming relationship, from resistance to reverence. You stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start saying, "This, too, is part of my becoming." Marcus Aurelius buried children, led a dying empire, and faced betrayal. Yet he wrote every night to remind himself, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That is the Stoic peace. Not loud, not heroic, but enduring. The kind that survives the decades and carries you quietly through the night. And maybe that's where you are now, tired, wiser, still learning to stand. If so, let this be your reminder. You don't need to erase your past to be at peace. You just need to make peace with it. Let the pain stay, but don't let it rule. Let silence stay, but don't let it isolate. You can walk with your scars. They're proof that you've returned from places others never dared to go. So when the next wave of life hits, and it will, remember what you've learned here. You don't need to speak to prove your strength. You don't need to fight to stay whole. You only need to return again and again to that quiet center inside you, the one no storm can touch. That's peace beyond pain. That's the Stoic secret. If this journey spoke to you, take a moment before you scroll away. Like this video if it helped you breathe easier. Subscribe if you want more reflections like this. Quiet, honest, human. And share it with someone who's still learning to find strength without shouting. Before we close, I want to ask you, what does peace mean to you now, after everything you've lived through? I read your stories. I remember your names. And as we keep walking this path together, just know you're not alone in your silence.